Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Hennessy. I'm Vice President and Director of Communications here at Music Biz. I'm also the staff liaison for our Physical Business Action Committee. The committee was started many years ago to be a voice for physical retail and the strength of physical retail in the marketplace. One of the outcomes from this group was creating and planning our Let's Talk Physical events. We do two events here virtually, and then one at the annual conference in May. So we're very glad to have you here today. And the Physical Business Action Committee is going to start up again in earnest in January with regular monthly meetings to plan those events for next year, as well as talk about the pressing issues that you're going to hear about today, and then many more that are going to come our way. And we're going to work together with labels and distribution and the industry as a whole to try to solve, those issues and have those conversations. So if you are a retailer who would like to join our Physical Business Action Committee, please send me an email. It's nicole.hennessy@musicbiz.org. We'd love to have you join our conversations and be part of this amazing group. With that being said, we only have an hour today and we have a lot to talk about. So let me just do a little housekeeping. At the bottom of your screen, you have a chat button. Talk amongst yourselves there, react to what's going on, say hello. But that's for chatting, that's for comments. If you have questions about what our presenters are talking about, use your Q&A box. That's where they're going to be, looking for specific questions if you have them. So chat box to talk amongst yourselves, Q&A to ask a question directly of the presentation that you're hearing. So without further ado, our first panel is going to talk about making sure that your sales are counted and making sure that they are accurately reported. Leading the conversation is Carrie Colaton, from Luminate, Chris Murator, and from Street Pulse, John Weston. Chris is going to start us off actually with a little presentation on where sales stand. It's become a tradition here at Let's Talk Physical, starting off with some Luminate numbers. So Chris, we're glad to have you here today, and I'm going to mute myself and let you take over.
All right. Thanks so much, Nicole. Happy to be here. Let me just share my screen here so everybody can see. So I'm going to quickly do just an overview of where things are at as far as looking at physical album sales year to date. And that's through basically the data we're looking at is through the end of October at this point. Jumping into it, just to take a quick peek at looking at independent record store sales so far year to date. We can see, obviously, I think most people on this call understand that there was a major change. Luminate struck a deal with Record Store Day to have all independent retail reporting in through Street Pulse into Luminate. That was accomplished in time for Record Store Day in April, which everybody was happy with. And what you're seeing is then at that point, once data was flowing back into Luminate from all the independent record stores, we did backfill some of the information, but we didn't implement the new modeling methodology until June of this year. So the modeling methodology was sort of replaced the old weighting that was in place going back to the early 90s and the beginning of SoundScan. It really was an outdated way of accounting for independent record stores that were not reporting their sales. So that methodology was sort of put to bed, and we implemented a new modeling methodology, which is much more accurate, and we feel really confident with the numbers that we're aggregating and putting out there in the industry that truly represent what's happening in independent retail. So here you can see the sales trend going forward from January through October. Those sales, and you can see that bump obviously from May to June, June representing when the modeling took place. So that's when sales were then being accounting for the non-reporting stores, which we estimate right about now is about 1,300 locations that are not reporting. But the vast majority of the stores that are reporting today do represent a huge chunk of the actual sales volume that's out there in independent retail. But in April, you can see that bump there in April was due to Record Store Day, which took place on the 20th of that month, and really caused a tremendous spike from in April, looking at the previous month in March. If we look at independent record stores, we look at the split of what's happening CD versus vinyl, right? So nearly three out of every four purchases that take place at an independent record store. And this is looking at data from June. So when the modeling took place through October, you'll see that you can see here that nearly 3/4 is vinyl purchases that are happening at independent record stores, but you still have a nice 27% of sales are happening through the CD configuration. Now, during the month of April, like we talked about, because of Record Store Day, that percentage that for vinyl sales jumps up to about 80% during the month of April for indie stores. We look at vinyl sales by month, again, just to sort of hone in on vinyl itself. It's very consistent from month to month to see sort of the proportion of sales from vinyl versus total sales at independent retail so far year to date. Since June, there's been more than 1 million vinyl albums purchased each month at independent record stores. So you can see there's a tremendous amount of people purchasing vinyl still at these stores, and that's not changing, right? That's continuing to grow. And you can see those figures there from June through October, those exact figures that, and that's the modeled data that you're looking at there. Just wanted to note that come the end of the year, we will be backfilling the information for January through May. That will include the modeled information. So we will have a comprehensive full year truly representing independent retail at some point towards the end of 2024. So if we now just look at, in general, physical album sales, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of bad information put out into the marketplace that truly wasn't representing what was happening among physical sales. So what we're looking at here is year to date, from the beginning of the year through the end of October. This is physical sales that does not include independent record store sales. And the reason that is, and just to highlight again, is because of that new weighting methodology that took place the beginning of 2023. The weighting was removed from the old methodology. And so you can't compare 2024 numbers to 2023. It's just apples and oranges. You're going to get this crazy downward number, which is truly not a number that's accurate or represents what actually is happening in the marketplace. So in order to do right now a true year over year, we just remove the independent record store sales, and then everything else is what you're looking at here. And so far through 2024, physical album sales are up 2.2%. You can see, looking past over the past several years, going all the way back to 2016, you can see sort of the trend is what has happened with physical sales, right? You can see the growth that came back in 2021, a slight decline, and more growth in 2023 happening among the physical album sales. And so far this year, album are down 2.2% in 2024. I'm sorry if I said up, it is down 2.2%. Now, just note that year to date, so far, we're coming into this fourth quarter, the holiday season. 35% of all physical album sales for the year occur in the fourth quarter of the year. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of sales, obviously, that are taking place from now until the end of the year that will change this picture drastically from what you're looking at right now. Now, if we look at vinyl album sales, you can see that they truly are up, okay? So disregard anything you may have seen in the media saying that the sky is falling when it comes to vinyl album sales. That is not the case. Vinyl album sales are up 2.1% so far year to date in 2024. Again, these figures you're looking at do not include independent record store sales due to what I explained before. And, since independents are a large portion of what happens, especially in the vinyl configuration, that 2.1% probably would be higher if we had a true way of accurately showing year over year. But right now, what we can display and show is that vinyl albums are up 2.1% year to date. And once again, note that 1 out of every 4 vinyl album sales happen in the last 6 weeks of the year. So vinyl is obviously a huge gift-giving product for people, for consumers. And so we're going to see obviously some very strong activity happening here as we approach the last 6 weeks of the calendar year. And you can see that growth since going back to 2016. Vinyl's just been growing, every year since then. Tremendous growth during the COVID time, where we had over 100% growth from 2019 through 2021. We did see, a much smaller, obviously, growth happen after that, but we continue to see, the more important thing is that we continue to see growth here. This is a configuration that continues to see upward trends every year. If we look at sort of by strata in Luminate, obviously stores, how they're reporting is broken out into different strata classifications. So if you look at CD versus vinyl album sales, what percentage is happening in each of those configurations? Well, if we look all the way to the left, it's the total physical album sales total. You can see that 54% of all album sales are vinyl this year, and compared to 46% of which are CD. Okay, and then if we look at each of the strata breakdowns, you can see e-commerce, stores, and mass market, which includes the combination of chains and mass merchants. In the next gen platform that will be fully launching come the new year, you're going to see that mass market will be sort of the new strata classification, which combines the old chains and mass merchants into one. So e-commerce and mass merchant and mass market are typically more driven with CD versus vinyl. But then once obviously you look at independents, where a huge chunk of their sales are happening for vinyl. Direct to consumer, 60% of direct to consumer sales are vinyl, and Venue is now showing a higher percentage vinyl versus CD. And non-trad retail still tends to be driven more by CD versus vinyl. If we look at the physical album sales by strata breakdown here, what percentage of sales happen within each strata. So you can see total physical sales, and this is again what you're looking at here is the modeled information. So again, since June through October, which represents all independent retail, you can see that independent record stores account for 30% of all physical album sales since the beginning of June. They are the largest strata representing for physical album sales. E-commerce and mass market closely behind them at 28 and 27% respectively, and then D2C accounting for 12% of all physical album sales so far since June. If we look at the CD configuration, that changes slightly, and here e-commerce is the largest strata, representing 35% of all CD album sales from the modeled period of June through October, with mass market just closely right behind them. Independents representing about 18% of all CD album sales since June, and then D2C, which we'll talk about a little bit further down the road. You can see representing 10% and is definitely an area of growth that we're seeing for physical sales. We look at vinyl album sales now. That picture changes drastically to show that independents are truly driving this space as far as where sales are happening. Since June, independent record stores, 41% of all vinyl album sales are happening at independent record stores. E-commerce and mass market are basically comparable at 21% each of the share of where vinyl is happening. D2C 13, and then Venue and non-trad representing a very small number. But here is the highlight, the 41% of all vinyl happening at independent retail. If we look at direct to consumer album sales year to date, D2C is, is not a surprise to anybody on this call, I'm sure. That is a growing segment, right? A lot of labels are looking to create more of a direct-to-fan interaction. What we're seeing is D2C album sales are up 38% year to date, year over year. If we look at the breakdown, physical D2C sales up 30%, 6.1 million versus 4.7. And if we look at that even a little bit more granular, CD and again, vinyl driving more than CD there. 21% growth for vinyl D2C sales year to date, and 47% growth in the CD configuration year over year for D2C. The big thing to note here is digital. While it's the smaller portion of digital of direct-to-consumer sales, it is representing the largest growth year over year of what we're seeing. Some people may have an opinion about that, and there'll be more that will come from that. But right now, 74% digital D2C album sales are up year over year. So what we are looking forward to, obviously a new year coming in 2025. During the first quarter, we anticipate having a number of new data providers coming on board. Due to the implementation and rollout of our new Next-Gen Connect platform, we had to halt bringing on new data providers for the last 3 months of the year. That doesn't mean new indie stores. It means anybody else who's not who's a new actual supplier of information into Luminate. We are still loading more and more new independent stores every single week through our relationship with and partnership with Record Store Day and Street Pulse. You can see here, Barnes & Noble College Bookstores is going to be a provider that's coming on board early in the new year. They represent, they're carrying vinyl sales in 84 college and university bookstores. B&N College, which operates separately from Barnes & Noble, manages over 700 college bookstores and is looking to expand many will carry vinyl albums going forward. Tractor Supply Stores will be another chain that's reporting. They'll be classified as a non-traditional retail provider into Luminate come the new year. They have about 1,000 stores and carrying right now approximately 4 to 6 vinyl titles. And this company is really mainly geared towards the country genre as far as the vinyl product that's being made available for purchase there. There's a company called ElasticStage.com. Excited to bring them on board come the new year. They're one of the first on-demand vinyl platforms for artists and labels to report all vinyl and CD sales. Their platform allows artists to make vinyl available to their fans without any cost to the artist. This is really big for an indie artist that just doesn't have the money to purchase and make vinyl. Basically, as fans purchase a vinyl album through their service, the artist store on ElasticStage, it's then created and shipped to the customer within 3 to 5 days. So it's a really cool new platform that's going to be coming in and reporting into Luminate. And then MerchCat will be another provider coming in 2025. MerchCat, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Vanessa and her company and her platform, a new venue sales reporter into Luminate. This will be another option for reporting venue sales into Luminate. They're working with several independent artists right now with some great deal of interest from some small label groups. Their platform really is a great platform and putting in some new enhancements that are, I believe, coming live very shortly. But we're excited to hopefully bring them on board in the first quarter of 2025 as a new venue sales reporting option. And then obviously, every day we're working to increase those number of independent record stores reporting to us, working in conjunction with the labels, Record Store Day, Street Pulse. We have now identified 100 new independent stores that have agreed to report their sales into Luminate through Street Pulse. And that will be something we'll be working on, John and I, on trying to bring those guys on board and get them up and reporting. I think that's it right now. I have as far as stats, and if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I don't know if we're going to be taking that now or later on. Nicole, maybe you can answer that. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to to reach out to me.
Hey, sorry, Nicole. I'm not really sure how this works, but I was just gonna come on and say there are a couple of questions that are specifically for you, Chris, before we bring John in for a conversation.
Sure.
And one was, is Bandcamp considered D2C, and how are they folded into that?
Yes, so Bandcamp reports to us directly, and those sales are considered direct to consumer because they're anything artist centric or label centric is considered a direct to consumer.
Okay, and then this is a question at Venue.
Is
At
a reporter, yep, and we'll
Okay.
run in a reporter, yes.
Will MerchCat be replacing them, or is that in addition
No,
to?
that's just another option. MerchCat's going to be another option for people to use for reporting venue sales. Ad Venue will still, be a data provider and reporting venue sales, but now there'll be another option for people to potentially use to report venue sales into Luminate.
Okay, that was Jocelyn's question. Jocelyn, just to say, we'll get to your other question in just a second when we have the conversation. I saw that. And Eric from Ames Criminal Record Store Day is asking, Aaron, I don't know if he can still share his screen, but if you could go back to the D2C slide for a second, I think his question pertains to that.
Sure. Hold on. Let me just go back to sharing.
Eric, get ready to put your question up. Or no need. So
D2C slide.
I think you're going to get it anyway, Eric. It was kind of towards the end.
Towards the end, yeah. Where is it? This one?
That one. Eric, did you have a specific question there, or just was that a lot of numbers? That was a lot of numbers for me to soak in at once.
Got to see how good you are.
Not that good. Okay, if we don't have a specific question, actually, I'm going to ask this question. Is the deck available to be shared?
I can make it available, yes.
Right. We can maybe send that out, Nicole and Aaron, after, as you guys will know who was on the call.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get that from Chris and we'll circulate it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Fantastic. I guess maybe it's time for us to start a little conversation about this with John Weston, if he wants to, join us on screen.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing that in and creating those slides for us and having a little test to see how many numbers we can keep in our head at any one time. Some of us aren't visual learners, so I do want to go over specifically what happened recently, the kerfuffle on social media and other places about vinyl sales. One report said they were down 33%, and I think that number played a little bit into how clever they thought they were with headlines, 33. And then immediately followed up by a report directly from Luminate and Billboard saying, no, they're actually up 6.2%. Can you kind of describe, first of all, how somebody got a 33% number, and then how the 6.2, was that right? 6.2, 6.4?
At the time, yeah, it was 6.2 at the time, yeah.
How those two numbers, which are so wildly different,
Mhm.
can both be said to be the same thing?
Yeah, so I mean, this is very easy. So Billboard puts, they have a static report every single week that's been there for years that basically just highlights weekly consumption by format and configuration and
That's Market Watch, is that what that's
called? Market Watch, yes. And so that's just an automated report that just goes in and pulls data from Luminate or Music Connect and just pulls numbers, right? And it's just a static report. Again, those same figures have been there every single week for previous weeks for the entire year, right? That nobody, and actually those numbers were probably showing larger declines, right? But they weren't a real accurate year over year picture because again, you were looking at weighted data versus unweighted, right? Unmodeled data. So you can't compare the two, but this is just a static report. Again, it's not nobody, even while Billboard had it there on their Market Watch, it wasn't true representation of really a true accurate year over year picture of what was happening for physical sales. So someone just wanted to, stir the pot And, because again, like I said, that down 33%, that number was even larger if they looked at it probably 5-6 months ago, So it's, since then we talked to Billboard. They since then have removed those, so there'll be nobody have any chance of sort of printing anything further that's not truly representing what's happening in the marketplace. Billboard's not saying that this was reality. Obviously, we've been talking the entire year, from our mid-year report, and other reports we've put out, been very careful of truly showing what's happening in the physical world. And that's why I was very careful in describing those slides today of saying what that data represents, because you can't measure and sort of compare and do analysis on apples versus oranges. It just really was important that the message was clear to everybody of how you look at a year right now is to remove the indies out of the equation and then look at everybody else where there's no modeling or no weighting in place. Look at everybody else year, and that gives you a true picture of what's happening in the physical world.
So basically, someone, in this case, a writer for Consequence, did their own analysis without understanding the context of how those numbers were there, the giant story around it as to the indies, why they were not included, and all of that. And then that got picked up. And in the world of social media, that's a big thing. I wanted to see and one of the ramifications of that, as an attempt to clear that up, Luminate then put out its own numbers, the 6.4, which, like I said, those are vastly different numbers, and one coming right after the other, and coming from Luminate, there were a lot of more comments about that. Well, that's obviously, you'd say that was, sales aren't down. It's in your interest for sales not to be down. And Record Store Day got a lot of that feedback. Shout out to Vinyl Alliance and everyone who helped us try and set that story straight. If sales are down, if sales are up, it's important that the numbers be accurate. And accurate, of course, is a word that has been used quite a lot as we get from where we were in October 2023, when Luminate announced the upcoming changes, to where we are October 2024, which is quite a long way. We've come a long way in terms of indie record stores reporting in search of getting to that accurate information. So when this all happened, I know of some ramifications on our end when this incorrect story gets out there. Obviously, you don't want everyone thinking sales are down if they're not actually down, especially by that much. That's a morale thing in terms of record stores. That's a mood thing, but it's also a real physical thing. There was a store and they publicly commented and said, "Thank you for clearing this up, because the risk assessment team at my local bank saw that story, the first one that said it was down." And I don't know what the situation there was, but that's a little chilling, right? If they're reading a Consequence story and seeing that, yes, they should do their own due diligence, but that's in their head. They're humans. That's what's in their head when making decisions for small businesses. So it's very important that these numbers be as accurate as possible. And I know that on the label side, on the manufacturing side, Jocelyn made a point earlier that even now, when you can't do year over year on a title or an artist or a genre to see what the sales are and accurately get year over year at the indies, it makes it harder. Maybe not harder, but you have to think a little more and put a little more into projecting what you're going to manufacture, because you don't have accurate year over year. My question to you, and John, I swear we're going to bring you in. My question to you is, when you say later in the year you're going to backfill, right, with the new modeling system, which we'll talk about in a second, sort of, will there be the opportunity when that's backfilled for a better year over year for purposes of projections, for purposes of in 2 years when an artist puts out a new record and someone needs to go back and say, oh, this is what we sold, this is what I think we'll,
Yeah, once the new modeling is implemented into the new platform, and that's really what we're waiting for, right? We're using Music Connect as the platform everybody's on right now, but we'll be moving over to next gen platform called Connect. Will be happening come beginning of year. That's where you'll see the complete 2024 numbers, right? With the model data from January through December. So at that point in time, we'll be able to go back and I'll be able to go back and sort of reproduce these slides with a full year, including all of independent retail, right? For every month, and not just looking at the model data from June through the end of the year, but looking at January through December. So that will happen, at the end of the year, once the modeling and backfill of that model. The backfill of the data is already in the next gen platform. So that's where you saw the raw numbers are in there, going back. It's just now applying the modeling to that data for those months from January through May. So yeah, we anticipate having that by the end of the year.
okay. And so, John, let's talk a little bit about that data that they're using to backfill, and going forward, the data that's being used for, projections and charts and all kinds of great stuff. That data that is coming from indie record stores. Your entire company is about this now, like getting indie record stores to report, making it easy for them so the data can be more accurate. I think Chris has more slides, but do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty cool what's going on because as we bring in new stores, the way we have it set up is that when we first pull from a store, we pull their past year's data, so we do have a good read of A to B from the previous year to this year. So when Chris does that backfill, that'll also include that. But as that 100 stores that Chris says that we have kind of on deck, 65 of them we already have live. And the issue that we have there is that some of the stores, well, all those 65 stores aren't using UPC numbers, they're using SKUs. So we've done a partnership with Alliance where whenever their stores order anything from Alliance, it will automatically populate in their point of sales account. And then that's how we identify the music. So, and then there's about another 35 stores that use Clover that we have not converted over yet, that we're still working on. So that's that additional 100 that we hope to have by the end of the year.
And what number are we at right now?
We're a little over 400.
Yeah. So right now, we've reached the 400 mark, right? Which is huge, right? 400 independent music stores, and to break that down, you're looking at roughly 270 plus our physical independent record store locations. And then the other 120 plus are online independent stores reporting through Street Pulse to Luminate.
I just real quick want to pause there for a second. It's not necessarily 120 indie online stores alone. It's also the online component of existing physical record stores.
Correct.
And that's a big thing, because that is a big change. Just simply the fact that that online sales is being counted, but also that online sale is now being counted towards the indies in terms of market share, because previously it wasn't. It was being counted towards online sales, which lumped them in with other giant online sales people. But that is something that's happening with Street Pulse, is that those sales are being counted towards indie market share, correct?
Yes, and those in the Next Gen Connect platform, you'll actually independents, all those sales falling into the independent strata, but you actually will be able to break out and see how many came from physical locations versus how many came from the online within the indie retail community. So, and that's will be available at a title level all the way, or rolled up at an aggregated level. So that's a nice new feature, that I know everybody in the independent record store community love, that we were able to finally do that and have the capability to do that, to really give a true, full, complete representation of the indie retail community. And just to note, because I've been back to Luminate for, I guess, like 8 months now. But you know, I was with SoundScan for 18 years, and talking about independent record stores, we now have more independent record stores reporting into Luminate than ever before, going back to the beginning of SoundScan in 1991. So it's this is a huge thing that we need to make sure we continue to communicate and drive and getting more stores reporting. But this is, the fact that independent retail has the largest representation in the industry figures and charts that it's ever had before is happening now. So it's something that, I like to highlight and just point out, because it's something that's really important. And I think it's great for the entire industry.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong or not, but about a year ago, the independent stores that you had reporting were mostly all reporting weekly, correct?
Correct.
And about 95% of that 400 stores are now reporting daily. So
Correct.
we are now, we stay, we stay in line with all the other reports that are coming into the industry as daily reporters, not just like kind of like an end of the week kind of like side note. I think it's really important that we have that.
Yeah, it helps everybody understand the impact or projecting first week, seeing what's
Yeah.
happening, and really understanding their position on the charts and how independent retail is affecting that.
So real quick, I want to, first of all, publicly thank John Weston and his staff for working so hard to make it easy for stores to do this reporting, this daily reporting. It's incredibly important, and we are continuing. And also thank you to all the people at the labels and the marketing companies and everyone who's helping us convince record stores, who can be a skeptical bunch, that this is important and something that should continue. I've seen 2 questions in the chat basically about, how many stores aren't reporting and what number are we going for. At Record Store Day, the pledge number is hovers between 1,400 and 1,500 stores who have signed the pledge. Some of those stores don't really sell new. Some of those stores are never going to report. When this conversation started happening about a year ago, I think general consensus was 500 stores is starting to be an accurate representation of the strata as a whole. 500 was kind of our target goal, but if you get to 500, we're not going to stop. Of course, we're going to go farther than that. But I do want, real quickly, because we're going to let the other folks come in and talk about some important stuff too. John, do you want to talk about, on a regular day-to-day release week, how labels and distribution can input their information, how important that is, and how record stores can start to sign up? It's this handy QR code, I have a feeling.
Yeah, there's 2 things that we really need to have, a few weeks before release week. Number 1, if you have any exclusives out there, any variants, make sure that you register at us and Luminate that we have it, because if we don't have it and we're scrambling the week of, it's really hard to capture everything and get it in time. So we prefer having those numbers 2 weeks. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you to a link where there's a form that you can register for Street Pulse. Chris, I don't know if you, I don't think I have the Luminate link on for that, but that's also important. So Luminate knows the variant or the exclusive is there, and also Billboard knows, and everyone's prepared going into the week. And then you're pretty much guaranteed everything's going to be running smooth. The other thing that we want to be on top of also is any events that you're doing at the store level. And again, a couple of weeks beforehand, register it with Luminate. That link is in that QR code, so that we're aware of it. We know it's happening. We can check the store, make sure we see the bump, verify that it's there, and we don't miss any sales. We just want to try to be as accurate as possible. And, those are the 2 things that we spend probably more time on than anything is, checking on all those variants, the exclusives, and also the events.
Yeah,
So,
and with the events, you got to make sure you register that at least 72 hours prior to the event. It's something that we really need to hold steady on that and really be strict with making sure people register with us, making sure that, hey, we are having an in-store, this is when it's happening, and so forth. If we just giving us that ability to react to it. And, a lot of times John and I are chasing during the week, issues with a lot of the in-stores, but to what he's been speaking about. But that's important. And just to note that, with the listening parties, we're constantly listening to everybody in the marketplace, right? And we've got together with Record Store Day Board and Billboard, and we were able to change one of the rules that previously were in place that identified listening parties could only take a week, could only happen a week prior to street date. But that window has expanded to 2 weeks prior to street date. So again, we are all talking, and we all want to make everything as accurate and make it easier for everybody at the end of the day. So we do listen, and we do understand the importance of all these events at independent retail. And we're just trying to make sure we're all on the same page and really measure accurately what's happening in those stores.
Awesome. And we'll provide that link in the chat. Once you guys get off your computer screen, please go ahead and put that in the chat. And now we are going to bring up my pal, Andrea Pascal, who's going to have a conversation with some other folks about two of the things that are relevant to this. D2C sales, which according to Chris's charts are increasing, and some of the feedback we heard when that fake news story about vinyl sales being down 33%, a lot of people believed it was true because things are more expensive and they personally are buying fewer records. So, Andrea, if you're ready to lead this interesting conversation, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being with us today for this important discussion. And thanks to everybody at Music Biz for pulling us together and giving us this forum to have it. So, Chris brought some really interesting facts to the table about just performance of physical retail, highlighting especially also some of the facts of indie retail in this sector. And so we've seen this consecutive growth for vinyl, for physical, and we see the important role that independent retail plays in that growth. So, we're here to discuss today, how to maintain, preserve that growth, maintain that growth, grow the growth, and so I've got a great group of stores and store representatives here to discuss this with me. We've got Tobago Benito, founder of FAMS and owner of DBS Sounds in Georgia. We also have Stephen Godfroy, co-owner of Rough Trade, and then also Eric Levin, owner of Criminal Records and president of Ames. So we've got a lot of store representation here. I think that we have seen I think the biggest issue that we're discussing amongst our boards and the Record Store Day board on the Physical Business Action Committee, it's that our industry is ever changing and it's always shifting and it moves quickly. And so I think a lot of us have put a lot of work into this growth of physical retail. So how do we maintain that, right? And what challenges are we up against? I think that Chris did a really good job of addressing, and Carrie as well. One of the important things was representation, right? Like indie retail was underrepresented in the charts. And we recognize how important those charts and this first week positioning and all of that is to artists and management, et cetera. So we made some great strides in working with Street Pulse and Luminate to increase that representation so we can more accurately report the role that we play in physical retail. And, I think the other that we've talked about, which Carrie kind of noted, was pricing. So we've engaged a younger vinyl audience and a younger kids. There's a whole new generation. A lot of this came out of, I think, the pandemic boom of people buying records. But we've engaged a younger audience in the stores. And so that's something that I think everyone on this call today really needs to think carefully about because these record stores, they provide a community, right? And they're a way to engage the community in a unique way. And so that's one factor, but also that younger market, we've got them engaged. So we've got to keep physical music accessible to that younger. So pricing is a key factor. I don't know, let me turn over to one of the stores here. Do you want to speak to that and what you're seeing in your stores and, you know, kind of the trends and the shifts there? Anybody want to take that?
I mean, I could jump
On
in.
your- Please, Tobago.
Okay. I say I could jump in. Definitely, we've seen a more younger audience, especially in my store. I'm seeing a lot of young African American women purchasing vinyl as well. So that's been happening since the pandemic, actually. So, you know, I am hearing some complaints about why the vinyl cost is driven up so much, going up so much. And you know, I really don't, I say it's, you know, manufacturing and things of that nature, but, you know, it's definitely a problem. You know, we have something good going on right now, and I just believe that, you know, the margins is really not there if you're purchasing from a one-stop. You know, if you're paying $27 for a record and retailing it at $32.99, there really is no margins there. So I would like for these record companies to just really take that in stock and kind of keep the price affordable so we can move more volume. And that's what I have to say about the pricing.
Eric, did you have something to add?
Yeah, well, I would say that, of course, we've added the youth market and have subsequently lost them because of fund availability. I mean, there was an article on CNN this week about doom spending, which I tried to track just in my own store. It's like, are sales up? But we've also shaved off the top, the older customer with this excessive pricing. You know, these are customers that bought records in the 70s and 80s for $3.97 to, you know, $7.49. Or I've been doing this a long time, so they're gone. They're just you know, they're priced out of the market. And this is, well, I promised not to be doom and gloom. So price for everything.
Well, I think that's it. Yeah, because I mean, we're seeing it everywhere, right? You're seeing it, you know, everybody makes the joke about like the price of eggs. I mean, we're seeing, you know, we're seeing that everything does cost a little bit more. And, you know, I think we have to be really careful about the sort of the industry that we're all in, you know, music. I think there's many of us here that, you know, by the nature of our day jobs, I mean, it's like, yes, it is technically a product that we are selling, but I think that that's not the way that we prefer to think about music. It's an art form. It's a way that, you know, it's a thing that gets people through tough times, right? So I think we need to keep that in consideration and keeping that art form, keeping all of that accessible to the people that need it, that are choosing to invest in it, and you know, building that catalog for the future. I think, Stephen, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that as far as?
Well, you know, definitely record stores have a very unique role to play, I think, in society and for culture. You know, we're the one place that you can celebrate music culture as a whole, and being a kind of broad church that appeals to all ages, young and the old. And, you know, we've always fulfilled that role, and, you know, long may it continue. And I think that pricing definitely, it definitely puts music more into physical music, more into a sort of luxury bracket, which, you know, it shouldn't be the case. And, you know, you need, as a store, to appeal to every pocket. And I think that what you're seeing in new releases is forcing more and more stores to carry more and more used vinyl, in terms of the margins that they're able to get on used vinyl, and also the type of product that they're able to put in front of the customer to ensure that wide customer base. So I definitely, you know, echo to a degree, you know, some of the concerns on pricing for sure, but I think it's definitely, you know, margins is where it's at. And, you know, if a record is going to be more expensive, it needs to justify why it's more expensive. It can't just be, you know, a regular record that's, you know, taking whatever. So I think there's definitely more evolution here. And I think that the for the prosperity and the health of independent record stores, we need to try and be as egalitarian as possible in terms of the product that we offer.
Yes, I agree. And then also, Stephen, you kind of bring up another point as well that we've touched on and a little bit here, which is the community, right? So we've seen, I think a thing that's really important to consider, like we saw in some of Chris's stats, the growth of D2C. And, you know, we understand that's become a priority for some of the labels and distribution as well. But I think, and I've said this a lot in different conversations with people, I think it's very important, and I think one of the key points I was hoping to get across in this conversation today is, you know, this music ecosystem, right? And the importance that this physical retail, especially independent retail, plays in not just you know, the moment. So I feel like sometimes there are decisions that are being made that may be short term, feel like smart business decisions. They feel like growth decisions. But you know, we've got to look and zoom out and think about what are the long-term effects of that. So if there's this priority to grow D2C business, yeah, that's great on some levels. But what ends up happening is if you cut out these very important retailers that, like Stephen has just highlighted, you know, they're the community where people can in person engage. And we saw that with a lot of the listening events, especially, you know, people that were kids that were only really able to engage, you know, online on social media. But when this was a very new experience to them with the birth of, or the kind of comeback of listening parties and being able to engage in person and make friends and talk about music and interact in the way that many of us, you know, remember doing when we were getting into music. That's a very unique experience to independent retail. And I think that, you know, labels, artist management, you see the value of having that marketing arm. There's a very unique level of marketing that indie retail can provide. There's a very unique level of engagement with the fan and artist, you know, face to face that indie retail can provide. And I think that's a thing that you value when it comes to, you know, first week sales and things like that. But so I think it's really important to keep that front of mind that, you know, these stores that are represented here, you know, they were the front runners and, you know, the people that really truly all work together to bring back the resurgence of vinyl. They're the people that continue to promote the growth of vinyl. So, you know, I think for me and probably a lot of others, we're struggling to understand why they sometimes appear to be the afterthought on, you know, the part of your whole marketing positioning, you know, when they are allowed to be able to be a part of the game. You know, these are going to be, we've got to remember the role that they play. And if anybody wants to jump in here and again, kind of speak to that from a store level, but, you know, being sure to be able to continue to engage that consumer and keep that community alive and well, that's super important, I think, to all of us here.
We just want a level playing field. I think
That's right.
we're not asking for special treatment. I think we
Right.
just want respect. And I think that, as anyone would, and I think that some of the discriminatory practice from certain areas of the industry that kind of relegates the welfare of independent record stores, I think it's shocking. And I think, as you said, you know, Andrew, it's this short-termism, you know, is really damaging in the longer term for sure. And it's really sad to see. And as I say, it makes you angry because it is disrespectful. The fact that you are, it's tough to be in retail, let alone music retail at the moment. And I think that all the costs that you have to face as a retailer on the high street, if you then have that in addition to your own industry, your own the suppliers of the product that you're selling, making it harder for you as well by not allowing you to sell it at the same time that they are able to sell it to their fan base before you are. They're able to sell it cheaper for than you are. They're able to sell a better version than you are.
Different
And you
variant,
come up-
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you come up against all these things and you think, well, why do I want to sell your record?
You're right. Another thing, Andrew, before time run out, that I'm seeing a problem with is also stocking issues from the one-stops. Because, you know, God forbid you forget to order something, and by the time you get to it on a Monday or Tuesday to order it, it's already sold out. And I don't understand what's going on with that. I mean, and I'm seeing it happen often. If you just happen to, you know, sometimes you even pre-order it and you might not get it. So I'm having an issue with that for me personally, and I'm hearing complaints from our stores as well that I don't know what's going on. It seems like by the time the street date come, even if it's on a Tuesday or Wednesday, you cannot get the product and it's coming out. And then sometimes, you know, you have to wait about a month to get it back in, you know, so.
Yeah.
Well,
And we're seeing
goes
that
back,
on some priority. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
well, it goes back to the D2C equation. It's why I asked Chris to show us that D2C growth again.
Yeah,
They've got it.
yeah,
It's not that
yeah,
they've gotten it early, which sucks, that their artists are promoting. I mean, it's all, as Steven said, a lack of parity,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
also the missing vinyl.
And I think that a lot of labels are listening to us though, and I think the independent sector especially, they've really, responded well to our concerns. But some of the major players, as it were, certainly seem to be going in the opposite direction.
And I think that everything that you guys are saying is a message that it's a thing I think about and say a lot when we get into these discussions. I think it's super important to I think especially to young consumers, they really want to think about where they spend their money, but you're dealing with super fans, right? So I think what these guys are asking for with it is just kind of having the same place on the starting line. It feels like a fair ask to me. Let's let the consumer, decide if they want to buy it from the artist's website, if they want to also support their local independent record store who is, played a significant role in them developing their taste in music, all of those types of things. I think, we should be working to create that equality across the board and let the consumer decide where they want to put their money. Because right now, I think, when you're dealing with all these staggered street dates and everything, it does skew the choice, which then skews the data. So I think that that's something that we should also think about as well, as like, let's, really reflect what's happening, but you've got to give everybody sort of the same chance at, where the role that they play, and then you can adjust accordingly.
And the thing is, the consumer, we all know this is like common sense though, but the consumer looking at you like you failing. Like, why I don't have the new Tyler, the Creator? They're coming in, where is it? Why you don't have it? Well, he's selling it on the site, and that's just what you have to tell them. But, it makes us look bad. They spending their gas, time, and energy and coming in there with the money to purchase it from us. But it's not there for us to purchase. And that's the sad part. It's going back to what Stephen is saying. It's just like, the people say they care about you, but I rather you show me you care about me. That verb, show me that action word, show me that you care, that you really are hearing what I'm saying, and it really is important to independent record stores. And if it is, let's keep the pricing fair. Let's get the records when everybody else is getting the record, and maybe something just came to mind as I was just talking there, is maybe getting some of these key managers in the room. Because if we're talking it here and some of these managers that's managing some of these key artists understand the importance, the significance of the indie retail and how much more they could get. And I think I said that on a panel at summer camp a couple of years ago. I think we really need to get some managers in the room, because I know the label go back to them and tell them the importance of dropping everything at once, but maybe if they see it, they hear it, and it's coming from us, I think that might make a difference. Because, we've been spinning the wheels. This happened with CDs when everywhere, you know, when I'm coming up, they selling everywhere Sunday for $9.99, and I'm paying $10, $11 for it. And we've been talking that talk for decades. So I think that's where maybe music biz need to start looking into getting more managers in the room.
With that, I think we are at time. You know, obviously strong, you know, feelings. This is a big issue, I think, for us. And I know one that we will continue driving as, you know, coalition heads and representatives and Record Store Day. This is our mission, you know, advocating for indie retail. I know that the Physical Business Action Committee will continue to have conversations and explore these topics, and you know, would love to continue discussions on these topics as well. But thanks to everybody for being here and being open to start the conversation here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for being here in attendance to listen to these important conversations. Again, if you'd like to be part of the Physical Business Action Committee and have these conversations with us and try to find solutions, I urge you to just drop me an email and we'll get you on that committee call as we kick off at the beginning of the new year. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you for all of my panelists for sharing your knowledge. I greatly appreciate it.
Right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.